So let's now consider our passage from Isaiah chapter 5 and 1 to 7 as Warren read it out for us. It's a story of around about the end of the 8th century BC, so say 720 BC for the sake of argument. It's a story of what we would call these days tough love. Tough love. It appears to be a story about a vineyard and someone who spends a lot of time trying to make it as good as can be made, so clearing the soil and keeping wild animals and so on away and keeping thieves away and building a wine press and then sitting back and rubbing their hands together and waiting to get some fantastic grapes as a result, and then getting a bit of a shock when the grapes turn out to be yucky. So yes, it is a story about a vineyard, but it's actually referring to God and his relationship with the Israelites. Kind of a parable, if you like. God's been setting up the Israelites with lots and lots of blessings, giving them preferential treatment, looking after them when they were amalgamating with other races round about and when they were moving around into new places, looking after them spiritually and physically, trying to build with them a close covenant relationship. And he had every reason to start thinking, good, they're going to reward this preferential treatment by being especially good, by being especially good followers of me. Maybe worshipping that little bit more enthusiastically, maybe serving in their community a little bit more enthusiastically, maybe giving more of their time to me. But no, he actually found the exact opposite. God had done everything he could possibly do. He had a reasonable case for expecting good behaviour. So maybe obedient people, expecting a trusting people, expecting a loyal people, expecting a righteous people. And a people who would be ever so keen to avoid, whenever they could, sinning, stepping away from God, acting against God, and so on, hurting others and hurting God. Maybe he had an expectation that they would be that kind of good people. But it turns out there's a huge gulf between God's expectations of them, reasonable expectations, and actually their performance in reality. Not a little difference, a huge chasm. Hardly ever did they seem to be doing what God would have wanted them to do, what would have pleased him. And you know what? God says, enough is enough. Enough's enough. Your special status, your special treatment is going to end. And I'm sorry to say it, but it's your fault. It's not just me being a nasty God, if you like. It's actually, you're going to get what you deserve for once. And you need to understand this simple rule. Actions, and sins in particular, have consequences. Actions and sins in particular have consequences. Now, I've told you before about the group in the early Christian church called the Epicureans, who had a weird way of looking at things and said people will only come to God if they see God being very, very merciful, because everyone's aware of all their sins most of the time, and if they see God forgiving lots and lots and lots of sins, they're going to say, this God's a really nice chap, I want to be part of his kingdom. If he's going to keep on forgiving whatever I do, then I want to be part of his team. And so they said, how do we attract new converts into our little sect, if you like? So let's sin as much as we possibly can, because then God will forgive us, and people will say, look how much that God forgives. I want to be part of his church. Well, kind of a bit of a skewed logic in there somewhere. So they went around doing as much sin as they possibly could all the time in the hope that that would draw people to this forgiving God. I hope none of you attempted to try that route yourselves, but it was very popular at the time, and you can imagine why. Do what you want, and God will forgive you. So go out and do as much bad as you can. Well, obviously God's realised that some of the people are following even then. Back in the days before Christ, people are still following that kind of mentality. Let's just do what we want. And if God likes it, God likes it. If he doesn't, he doesn't. I don't really mind either way. I'm just going to live out my life, and that seems to be pretty much the mantra of our society today, isn't it? If God likes it, fine. If he doesn't, what do I care? So actions, and sins in particular, do have consequences. Now, we need to put a kind of rider on this, because God is not abandoning them. God is not loving them any less. God is not distancing himself from them. God is not saying, I've had enough of you, I will never have anything to do with you ever again. What he's giving them is a bit of a slap on the wrist and saying, for your own good, you need to snap out of it. You need to start thinking about what's good and appropriate behaviour and what isn't. So he's going to see them differently because he's seeing how sinful they are, and he's going to be maybe a bit disappointed, maybe a bit angry. When I was growing up, my parents were sometimes angry with me. I can't think why, because I was an incredibly good, well-behaved child. Never did anything wrong ever. So I don't know why they got angry with me. But what bothered me more was when I disappointed them. I don't know whether you've had the same experience. When you know you've let them down, you know you've not done as well as you might have done. You've been naughty when you didn't need to, just for the sake of it. And you just thought, I've let them down. I've disappointed them. And that kind of made me sad. And that actually made me more likely to do good in the future than them kind of shouting at me. So God notices very carefully our response to all the goodness that he bestows upon us. Our response, and all of our response. Not just the bits we want God to see, not just the bits we bring before God in our prayers, the kind of cleansed bit, that vision of ourselves that we put before God that presents ourselves in the best possible light, but actually the real, whole us, the inside bit. Now, I've said before, if I came round your house this afternoon, unannounced and knocked on the door, you'd panic like mad, push me into the posh lounge, and you'd run around locking the door to all the rooms you didn't want me to go into, thinking, oh, well, I might show you around my house, but you're certainly not going to see in there, and you're not going to see in there, and you're not going to see in there. Because that's the rubbish room, and that's not been dusted since this time last year, and that's, the grass is growing, you're just not going in there. And we're a bit like that with God sometimes. We try and kid him that we're actually kind of whiter than white. But kind of God sees through that and says, well, I can see what's inside. I see what your thoughts are. I see what your dreams, your hopes, those little secrets that you've hidden from other people. So God notices all of the response to the goodness he's put upon us. Now, we sang a bit earlier, I need thee every hour. And there's the other hymn, Count Your Blessings, all about God's close relationship with us, how he notices each bit of our lives. Sometimes when we have a wedding, we had one for the first time in about 200 years here the other day, and I said to the photographer, quite naturally, this is my best side. Because, she may have taken some pictures of the bride and groom, and I'm sure she was there only really to take pictures of me. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? So that's my best side. And that's how we sometimes present ourselves. And God says, let's just look at the other side, shall we? Let's just take a picture of that and see what we see. So in the story, the man says, why did it produce sour grapes? I don't understand. I worked so hard on this vineyard. It wasn't like I left it to rack and ruin and hoped for the best and crossed my fingers. I worked blooming hard to make this thing produced good grapes and it produced bad grapes. Why? Can't work it out. So, yeah, God's got reason to be disappointed with us sometimes, to be angry, frustrated. And this is why there's no point at all in God blessing us with lots of physical and spiritual blessings like he does. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Loads and loads and loads of them, especially looking back with hindsight. There's no point in him putting all these blessings upon us if we're going to squander them, if we're going to ignore them, if we're going to misuse them, or waste them, or be ungrateful for them, or simply puffing ourselves up with pride, thinking that we've done it all ourselves. There's often a prayer we use which says, please help those who are not doing very well at the moment, and let those who are having a really good time of it realise where that blessing's come from. Why they're having a good time is because God's enabled them to do so. God's encouraged them to do so. God supported them in having the good days as well as supporting them during the bad days. So no point in God blessing us if we're going to squander, ignore, misuse, waste, or be ungrateful. It's a bit like we're walking through the countryside of an evening and it's starting to get dark and someone's put little lamps all the way along the side of the path so we can see where we're going. Kind of marked out the route for us to follow because it's not otherwise obvious. And then we totally ignore the lights and we wander off into the undergrowth and into the bushes and into the hedgerows and into the fields and get scratched and fall over and so on. And then it kind of dawns on us, wait a minute, I wonder if those lights were there for a reason. I thought they looked pretty, but I wonder if they had a deeper reason. And it turns out, of course, they were there to guide us. And part of the blessings that God gives us is the Holy Spirit to guide us each and every day, to lead us, as we say, into all truth. And what do? Yeah, we do that. If we're honest, we wander off time and time again into the undergrowth. And then say, ow, or oops. And God must think, I went to all the bother of lighting that path, and what do? They wander off into sin. Whenever they like it, whenever it feels like, when they can't be bothered to work out that I'm actually guiding them. Or another example, someone comes round to your house every week and weeds and cuts your grass and sorts out your garden. It's a good job of it, plants pots, feeds things, a bit like the vineyard, really. And, just gets rid of all the weeds. I don't know whether you're good gardeners. When I'm doing the garden, I kind of grab hold of a plant and then turn around to my wife and look for a sign as to whether it's a weed and I'm supposed to pull it up, or it's a plant and I'm supposed to feed it. I've never been very sure. I don't want to get it wrong, because I'm the person who regularly in our house waters the plastic plants. And my daughter will say, Dad, you do know that plant's plastic, don't you? Of course I do. I'm just trying to think of some wheedle excuse. But so this person's done your garden, they made a real nice job of it, and they do it day after day after day, week after week after week, and you never even look at it. You don't look out the window, you don't go out there, you don't sit in it, you don't enjoy it. How would you feel? You'd think, I've done all that work on that garden. I've done all the work and they're not even looking at it. Taking no notice of it, they're not grateful for it, never said thank you, never used it. And God must be like that when he floods our life with all these blessings, spiritually and physical. And we just kind of toddle along with our hands in our pockets, totally ignoring 3/4 of them. And as I said, he must go, they won't go down the right path. They won't be grateful for what I've done for them. They'll just almost forget about me in their lives until something goes wrong. When they open a little box called God, they get God out, ask for help, put God back in the box and in the cupboard again. Thinking we know better than him. And yet he's lighting this path for us. He's tending our garden. So the passage is not directly aimed at us. It doesn't mention us by name. But it does contain this timeless truth that we need to apply to our lives. So God's very willing and very excited about giving things to us. But only if we're going to use it. And use it for doing good. For building up his kingdom. So, homework for this week. I want you to think of one skill, talent, ability, blessing, whatever you want to call it, that God's given to you. We've all got one. We can be humble, but we've all got at least one talent that God's given us. We might be good at helping our neighbours or praying, or we might have great courage or great patience or great insight or whatever it might be. God's given us, each one of us, at least one gift. So, 1, find out what it is. If you don't know what it is, pray to God and ask him to point it out to you. 2, how can I nurture that gift to make it better? To use it more efficiently, if you like. And 3, how can I use it to further God's work here on earth? To be part of his plan, to be part of his work, changing society into what it should be like. So find it, nurture it, think about how I might better use it. And to God be the glory. Amen.